This team is dealing with an identity crisis, one that could be absolutely catastrophic for the rest of the season.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rao, and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Welcome back to my everydayers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And with that $5, if that $5 bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the FanDuel app today. This Kansas State team going into the bye week, their first of 3 bye weeks on the season, is 1-3. After losing to Iowa State in Dublin week 0, after almost losing to North Dakota, losing to Army, and then losing on Friday night to Arizona, this team is 1-3. A team that had Big 12 aspirations, a team that had college football contender aspirations, is now sitting at 1-3. And the worst part about it is that, one, they're still in it because they are only 0-1 in the Big 12. So if you want to say that's not the worst part, that's actually probably the best part. But the worst part about it is that Coach Kleiman and his coaching staff have no idea what the identity of this team is moving forward. This is the same program, folks, that dealt with the Bill Snyder years, the great years of Bill Snyder, that absolutely know the identity of this team, that had the pillars, everything you name it. And of course, this is the same program, the same staff, the same head coach that took you to a Big 12 championship in 2022. But for some reason, just a few years later, this team has no idea the identity of this roster. We try to talk about in the past where it wasn't a talent issue, it was a discipline and execution. Well, Chris Kleiman's kind of backed up on his steps a little bit. Although he did say in the post-game presser, we didn't get a Monday interview for him this week because of the off week. And you could say maybe he's avoiding some hard questions. You could say that too. I wouldn't disagree with you, because this is a fine moment for him to answer some of the questions from the media. What's going on with this team after we've all had a chance to digest and figure out what's going on. But we won't hear from Chris Kleiman this week, at least as of right now in the beginning of the week. So all we're going off of is what he said post-game after losing to Arizona on the road on Friday night to move this team to 1-3. He said he needs to evaluate the staff, what needs to change, what needs to adjust. That's an obvious thing. Absolutely needs to happen. What needs to happen and adjust? Well, his opinions might differ from ours, mine exclusively, thinking that you need to make an absolute change offensive coordinator. We'll see if that decision actually happens. But the biggest thing that I got was he doesn't know the identity of the team. And he said he doesn't know if the talent's there. He called out the talent. And one thing that we mentioned in the past was maybe it's a discipline or execution thing. Maybe it's not talent. The talent is there. This entire offseason, I have been sitting here on the rooftops and telling you how I think the talent's there. I thought the recruiting class was great. I thought the transfer portal additions were fantastic. That is yet to be the case. We're 4 games into the season. We're a third of the way there. And I have to tell you that Chris Kleiman is right. And what he's right about is this team does not have an identity. This team does have a talent issue. And then also what he said in past weeks, it does have a discipline and execution. It's all of the above at the moment. The transfer portal has turned out to be a blunder yet again, with the exception of a few. Luis Rodriguez might be the best player on the team. The kicker, hitting from 50 yards. Imagine what would have happened if they would have trusted him in Dublin, even with the inclement weather. Might be a different ball game. Might be a different season if you're thinking about that and you're trusting your kicker. Of course, that's near here or there. That's a what-if situation. I am well aware of that. But it just makes you wonder after seeing what he's done over these last couple of weeks. He's a really impressive player. But I shouldn't be saying the kicker is the best piece he brought in the transfer portal. And there are other ones that have been great. Marion Fortenberry has shown signs of greatness. Quay Moss has shown great signs of improvement and potential. I love some of the pieces. But some of the highlight guys that we've reached out, the offensive line pieces I thought was going to make this team step up and be great, not have to worry about losing Connor Riley to the Dallas Cowboys. That's been a blunder. That's certainly been a blunder. And it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. Of course, another thing that Chris Kleiman brought up was, once again, the loss of Dylan Edwards. He comes in, only plays, 4 plays in the one on Friday, and then had to come out. He knew that he wasn't going to be able to play the entire game, Chris Kleiman said in postgame. He gave him props for sticking out and actually giving it a go, which is great. But you lost him again. And then he kind of brought up the fact that they seemed lost without him yet again. Look, Dylan Edwards hasn't played 99% of the offensive snaps this year. 99%. That number's probably a little saturated, a little overboard. I don't actually know the numbers, but it feels like 99%. He's only played in a couple offensive snaps against Arizona, didn't play a single offensive snap since then. Remember, we lost him on the punt return at the beginning of the game, week 0, against Iowa State. So 99% might actually be the number, folks. But since then, Dylan Edwards, it seems like it's just causing clueless feelings for this coaching staff. What are they going to do? Now, there were signs of life from this offensive line and this running game on the 2 rushes that we got out of Dylan Edwards. He got outside the tackle, he got around the corner, and he made some moves. Now, when you look at the box score, you're not going to really see that. He only had, 14 yards total? I think that's the case. 13 yards. 4 rushes for 13 yards, averaged just over 3 yards a carry, but he had an 11-yard gain. And there were signs showing, okay, this is what we wanted from Dylan Edwards. It's so nice to have him back. And then the ankle sprain, the high ankle sprain comes back. And they're no joke. They're really hard things to deal with. And say what you will about this injury, high ankle sprains are no joke, and they're tough to play through. I myself haven't had one, but there have been multiple players on teams that I've played with, players that I've played with that have dealt with them, and they're nagging injuries. They happen for weeks, and hopefully this off week comes at the perfect time for Dylan Edwards. Overall, they say they need to be more creative. What does that mean? When Chris Kleiman says this team needs to be more creative, does that mean they need to utilize Jace Brown in the backfield like they did in the second half? Is that creative? Because if so, then it becomes predictable. Creative doesn't become unique anymore. And I think the element of surprise is what actually made Jace Brown get that nice rush, that 75-yard rush, to kind of give life back to Kansas State in the second half. So what does creative truly mean? Because I don't know if that's something that you can hang your hat on and say, this is the new identity of a team. We're just a creative team. A creative team, if that's your identity, still shows that you have no idea what your identity is. Creative sounds like a cop-out word for saying we're just going to go with whatever's working at the moment. That doesn't show that you're going to rely on a run game. You're going to focus on passing. You're going to focus on getting Avery out and about and making him utilize his dual threat quarterbackness that we have yet to see so far this season. None of that. So you got to find a way to be a new team, and you got to find it fast, because in just less than 2 weeks' time, you're back at it. You're in Big 12 play yet again, and you have just one, and it might not be enough, but you have one loss left in the rest of the season. You got to go at least 7-1 the rest of the way, at the very least. And that still might not be good enough for your chance to get to Arlington. Because last year, 7-2 was good enough. You're 0-1 in the Big 12 after losing to Iowa State. 7-2 was good enough with some tiebreakers. So you have to put yourself back in that situation. If you lose on a tiebreaker, then so be it. But getting to 7-2 has to be your only goal for the rest of the season. We'll give you one more loss. Get the 7-2. If you can get the 7-2 on the season, I think you think differently about where Coach Kleiman sits. You think differently about wherever the coordinators are, if there's not changes. You think about all that in a different light heading into the offseason. There have already been changes at the Power 4 level, multiple changes at head coaching. Now, I'm not calling and sitting on this podcast saying Chris Kleiman needs to get fired after going 1-3. That is not where I'm saying. But what I am saying is that we've seen UCLA coach been fired after their dreadful start. We've seen Virginia Tech fire their coach after losing to Old Dominion and their dreadful start. And we're at that moment in time in college football where you're at that 4-game mark. Players can now choose to decide to redshirt for the rest of the year without losing any of they can redshirt and this year doesn't count for them, and then enter the portal and try again next year. This might be the best thing for Kansas State to get right as a team, to figure out who actually wants to be here, to find that culture, find that buy-in. But at the same time, it could be the worst thing for this team as well, because some players are going to probably quit if they haven't already, decide the red shirt, and then enter the portal. And you can say, good, we don't want you here anyways. Some of these players, you're going to listen to this and you're going to think, yeah, well, we don't want those type of players here. I'm here to tell you right now that that's the world we live in of college athletics the rest of the way. That's not just going to be a college football problem. That's going to be a basketball problem, a baseball problem, all of that as well. But we're right at that line at this moment. You can play 4 games and still redshirt and not lose a single year of eligibility, move on, go somewhere else. The portal's wide open. They can't enter the portal at this moment, but they can decide the redshirt. Unlike UCLA and Virginia Tech, those players have 30 days to enter the portal after firing their head coach. There's just a lot of things to look at, to find a way. I want to dig back into those keys of victory we discussed on Thursday's episode and talk about if they met any of them after losing 23-17 against Kansas State, because these off-week adjustments must happen. Let's do that next right here on Locked On Kansas State. But first, this episode of Locked On Kansas State is brought to you by the Game Cap. Look, I got a quick question for all you college football fans out there. If you could go back in time, sit front row at your school's biggest rivalry game, what hat would you be wearing? Yes, I said hat. For me, it would be the game. And I'm rocking one right now. It's backwards because I love wearing hats backwards. I'm sure you've seen it on my shows, but I love that I get it's on this side actually. I love that I get a little bit of the logo. Those are one of my favorite things when I wear backwards hats. But these aren't just hats. They're the same vintage styles that fans wore back in the 80s and 90s. And guess what? They still go for the same price. That's the best thing about these hats that they did back then. So when you use code LOCKED ON, all one word, we will give you these vintage hats for just $16.99. So head to thegamecaps.com, that's thegamecaps.com, to grab your team's classic bar or retro circle design and use code LOCKED ON for an exclusive discount, because legends wear the game. This episode of Locked On Kansas State is also brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade, and 5 Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. These 2-ounce shot packs of caffeine of premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugars, and the best part, 0 crashes. What I love the most about how portable they are, you get the big taste, tiny shot, and you can take it everywhere. You get that boost when you need it. So that's my favorite part. I like to go with the grape flavor. That's my favorite 5 Hour Energy. I've liked it forever. But there's so many different flavors, as I mentioned. You can get 17 different ones. I like to go with the classics, though. Grape's my way to go. So enough of boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give you your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Get the flavors you love, be bold, and try something new in store and online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. Let's take a look back at our thoughts heading into the game against Arizona. Of course, Arizona beating Kansas State 23-17 on Friday night, moving the Wildcats of Kansas State to 1-3 on the season, with the loss to, of course, Iowa State and Army adding to that mix as well. I had 3 keys to the game for Kansas State to beat Arizona in Tucson. And for the record, let's give credit where credit is due. Arizona 3-0. First time they're 3-0 under Brett Brennan. First time, I think, since 2015 I saw that Arizona is 3-0. So they've obviously turned the program in the right direction. They have an identity, it sounds like. Kansas State does not. But my first key to victory was getting to the passer, getting pass rush. And if you look at Noah Fafita's stats, 16 for 33, had 78 yards through the air, did not throw any interceptions. There was I think a halfback pass that was the interception that Kansas State got to. So you can't say at least that a defense got to it. But overall, Kansas State did have 2 sacks. They did have 4 tackles for a loss. So there was somewhat pressure on Noah Fafita. Now, they couldn't stop the run, and that was I guess it wasn't really one of my keys to the game, but my pressure was the big one, and it didn't really work out the way it was. So you can say, yes, was good, but not good enough. But again, 2 sacks, 4 tackles for a loss. That's not the reason they lost this football game, but still one of the reasons why they couldn't stop Arizona. The run was insane. I mean, Ismail Mahdi with 189 yards rushing, averaged over 8 yards a carry, and that's a lot thanks to that 60-yard rush that he had. Absolutely insane in the game. That wasn't one of my keys to victory, but of course, you have to stop the run if you want to be able to get that defense off the field. Probably should have been one of my keys to victory. The next was bonehead mistakes. Bonehead mistakes was one of mine. You had a blunder on special teams. Again, for the 4th game in a row, you had a special teams blunder. Sterling Lockett fumbled the punt return, and that changed the aspect of a game. Like it messed up a possession. And when you're trying to make sure everything's working right, when you're not firing in all cylinders, which this offense, defense, and special teams is not, you can't afford to have these bonehead mistakes. You just can't have it happen at all. And I think that was their only turnover of the game, but it still caused issues. And this wasn't one of my keys to the game, but looking back to the game against Army and then this game against Arizona, you lost the time and possession battle yet again by a lot. 36 minutes to 23 minutes. And this is a team, unlike Army, that doesn't want to win the time and possession battle. Noah Fafita wants to air it out. They want to score quick, and they want their defense on the field. That was the complete opposite, and they still found a way to win this game. Arizona gave you multiple opportunities for you to take the game from them. Kansas State just didn't do it. Chris Kleiman said, it was one of his first things he said in the postgame, that they didn't win the line of scrimmage battle. And I agree. You look at time of possession, you look at the running game, that tells you alone for everything. He also said he feels bad for Avery Johnson. Do you? Do you feel bad for Avery Johnson? Look, he didn't have the best game this past week. Probably his worst game as a starting quarterback for Kansas State, at least this season for sure. He went 13 for 29, 88 yards. He rushed for 7 carries for minus 16 yards. I know there's sack yards involved in that as well. But really, on his designed rushes, the offensive line was terrible. And I think that's what he's getting at, for he feels bad for Avery Johnson, because the offensive line just didn't give him any favors at all in this one. Usually we went into these games and talked about how great the pass protection actually was. That wasn't the case in this one. Running, pass protection, Avery just had a really tough time against this Arizona defense. Now, Arizona's defense seems to be pretty good when you look at what they were compared to last year. 122nd in ranked defense. Heading into this game, they were in the 20s. So they definitely stepped up. And I'm sure they're even better now after playing this Kansas State team. But I don't know if feel bad is the right word for Avery Johnson. Unless you're already trying to play damage control to make sure that he's not going to hit the portal or give up on the team or change his views because he's one of your leaders of this player-led program. I don't know if that's where I'm going, but these are the type of phrases and words that we need to start paying attention to our head coach and some of our coordinators when they do talk about how they're talking about some of these players, especially the leaders of the program, to see if they still have this locker room. Because that is something that has changed in some other programs in the Power Four and why they've had to make changes at the very top this early in the college football season. It's insane, folks. It's absolutely insane. Coach Kleiman said that they are in the storm. As we said, quote, in the storm, they have to own it as coaches and players. Well, that storm is only going to continue because now you're heading into Big 12 play. And if you think this was the beginning of the storm, or if you think this bye week is the eye where you have some type of break, it's the complete opposite. The fact that we didn't hear from Coach Kleiman on Monday hopefully means that that's because they're out there practicing, that they're not giving any type of rest, any type of off days. They're putting every single type of effort they possibly can to get better. They had a limited spring practice window. They started earlier in the season. They gave some time off after the Dublin trip, and all of that didn't work out. So maybe the player-led program thing isn't the best thing. Maybe these coaches, if they want to find a way to, dare I say, keep their jobs, they might have to change it up a little bit. And what a perfect time to do so than this off week. Chris Kleiman, once again, prided the team being a substantial winner throughout his tenure, of course, in the Snyder years as well. And obviously, that's just not there right now. I will say this, and I'll give him props for this. He said he's not going to back away. He's not throwing in the towel. And hopefully that can rally the troops and keep this team going, because after UCF, and I'm not saying UCF is going to be a pushover, but after UCF, this schedule is absolutely dreadful. UCF is easily, maybe with the exception of Oklahoma State, easily your easiest opponent for the rest of the season. If you can't get past UCF, then I don't know what to tell you. Next, let's talk about a game that happened on Saturday for no reason at all. Let's do that next, right here on Locked On Kansas State. But first, this episode of Locked On Kansas State is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. And how great would that be? With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. So I've been playing Prize Picks lately, and it's such a fun way to stay locked in for the season. I mean, you can check projections like Josh Allen more or less on 270 passing yards, Saquon Barkley on more than less one rushing touchdown, or you can even get crazy, maybe add a little bit of Indiana Jones, Daniel Jones in there, because his hype is absolutely insane right now. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, to get $50 in lineups after you play that first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. And this episode of Locked On Kansas State is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here. We've already got 2 weeks of action in, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Don't be like that Pittsburgh Steelers player and wasn't ready for the kickoff, making some bonehead moves. Because right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if that bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the apps. Monday Night Football coming up tonight, and I'm excited to use it. And I always use FanDuel for the night games. That's where I get prime times in to get my live same game parlays in and live bets. It's the perfect time to do that. It's quick and easy, and it's the best way to add a little bit more energies to either your Sundays or Monday nights. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com, your place for your first $5 bet. For no reason at all, let's talk about Texas A&M beating Notre Dame. And for no reason at all, let's talk about how Marcel Reed, the quarterback for Texas A&M, threw 360 yards and 2 touchdowns. And for no reason at all, let's talk about how Marcel Reed, that quarterback, had 7 rushing attempts. And he only had 40 yards, but he had 7 rushing attempts. And for no reason at all, let's talk about how now 16th ranked Texas A&M beat Notre Dame 41-40 in a thrilling game thanks to the offense of Texas A&M. For no reason at all. Let's bring that up. And actually, there's a big reason if you're not catching my sarcasm here. And the biggest reason is because the offensive coordinator for Texas A&M is Colin Klein. Colin Klein, the offensive coordinator, and he's showing what you can do with talent on this roster. And I've mentioned in the past, in this past episode today, that Chris Kleiman believes that maybe the talent isn't there on this roster. Maybe it's not execution. Maybe it's not discipline. But when you look at what other potential, either offensive minds, maybe even a step up forward to head coach in the future can do, it gives you that potential what if. It gives you that potential what if in situation. Right now, you are at the moment where you might have to make a move this offseason. We might be in a potential head coach search when the season is over. I think we are definitely going to be looking at new coordinators. I don't know if we get that far to where we're going to make a head coaching change. I think Chris Kleiman is an excellent coach. What he's done for this program, getting him to a Big 12 championship and winning, is fantastic. But just like every coach in college sports, we've seen it with some of the greatest, sometimes you get run out. Sometimes your luck runs out. Sometimes your coaching techniques doesn't work with the newer generation. Are we at that moment? I'm not sure. And I don't know if I'm ready to say we are, but either way, we have to start looking at other options if that's the case. Chris Kleiman's not going to be our head coach forever. And if you're ready to make the change, you want to make sure that you are not going to let some of the best candidates pass you by if you are actually ready to do so. And the reason I say that is, one, because already UCLA and Virginia Tech have fired their coaches. That means that they are in the mood and already in the process of finding the next best coach. That means that every candidate out there, they have the pickings because they're going first. That is the only benefit of firing your head coach in the middle of the season, is you get the coach that you want, hopefully, before everybody else gets to do it at the end of the season. You get a head start on the portal. You get a head start on recruiting. You try not to lose those players that already committed to you. You get to do all that stuff compared to the end of the season where everybody's doing it, even the coaches that are still there, right? So that's the only benefit. If Kansas State decides to take that route, Colin Klein needs to absolutely be in consideration. Dare I say the top runner as being the new head coach to Kansas State. And I am well aware of where we're at in this season, September 15th. This is why this is a third segment, and we're talking about this for no reason at all. But Colin Klein has done a great job bringing Texas A&M, an SEC school, to 3-0, beating Notre Dame, a team that was in the national championship game last season. Notre Dame has now gone, of course, 0-2, but still. Texas A&M has a tough schedule the rest of the way if that's something you want to pay attention to. Now, they do have an off week, just like Kansas State does this week, but then they go to Auburn. Then they play Mississippi State, a team that just beat Arizona State. They got Florida, who they might have some head coaching issues of their own. They might not have the same head coach by the time they play Florida. They have LSU, Missouri, South Carolina, and Texas all on their schedule as well. SEC is no joke this year. If Colin Klein can continue to show that Texas A&M is a top dog in the SEC, Kansas State might not be able to afford a Colin Klein going into there. The fact that Eve was a player or not, there might be a lot of other suitors going after him for a head coaching position. So it's just a little food for thought as I leave you today on this episode. For no reason at all, the Texas A&M Aggies look pretty good on that offensive side. Hey, do me a favor before I let you go. There's another big moment here for Locked On college football fans. Locked On and Fire TV present the College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson and former college star Jesse Holley on Locked On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. So catch college football kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you back here next time, right here on Locked On Kansas State.